Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10, you know the drill, and I'm joined today by Sean Martin at Sean Martin TCW and Alison McConnell at Ali Bally 76. How are we doing, guys?
All good, thanks.
Decent, Tony. Yourself?
Behaving? Very well myself, yes, indeed. Now, today is Power Ranking Day, Sean, and we find out who's won the Celtic Way Power Rankings. But before we do that, we'll a nod to our sponsors. It's the One Football app, who has been declared our new sponsor. Tremendous, and we thank them for that sponsorship. And it's the one-stop football shop, as you know, for scores and news and lineups, transfer rumours, live streaming, match highlights, and much, much more. You can immerse yourself in the digital football world and have the best personal digital experience. So, guys, get loading the One Football app. Thanks very much for your sponsorship, and we'll hopefully be keeping that sponsorship throughout the season and the following season, Sean. And if you subscribe to the Celtic Way, of course, you see at the bottom, it's £3 for 3 months. You know what to do now. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Now, Sean, you've been a busy boy, haven't you? Watching the Celtic Way Power Rankings. And the explanation for this, Sean, is that ourselves, the three of us, we've collated man by man throughout the season, and you will declare the winner or the top 20. I think you're going to put it up on the screen and talk us through.
I will, aye. I mean, subscribers, if you regularly watch us, you'll seen the last couple of updates for this anyway, but subscribers will know that we do the kind of detailed man-by-man match ratings for every game. So I've been updating it sporadically, the spreadsheet, and doing updates as to who's got the highest average rating and stuff. So this is the end of the campaign. So this is essentially the first Celtic Way Player of the Season award today. Now, the kind of caveats is that the threshold for getting included in this was 810 minutes of action in the first team, which is 15% of all available competitive minutes. So it left us with a nice round 20 players after you factor out the fact that departed players and loan players weren't included. So the likes of Adam Montgomery didn't make it. And then obviously the ones that left early in the season, Ryan Christie, etc., didn't meet the minutes requirements. Neither did Liam Scales, who only missed out by 11 minutes, which is quite harsh. Oh, yeah. And then Mikey Johnston and Ismaila Soro and Albion Ayeti and stuff. So it left us with 20. The other caveat is that if you had a substitutes appearance that was literally 2, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, and you only got a 2 or 3 for them, it didn't seem fair to include that, so those have been removed. And if you finished level in average rating with another player, the tiebreaker is to give it to the player that played more on the premise that you've done it for longer, that kind of thing. So I'll put it up, and I'll also remove the branding for 2 minutes because it's going to make Tony look as if he's not here. 2 seconds. There we go. You're back, Tony. You're back.
Yeah.
Bang. Aye, so we'll take it in reverse order, I suppose. James McCarthy, 20. Anybody surprised that he's bottom of the pile?
No,
I don't. So I don't think anybody would be. I mean, what can you say? I still think you're looking at people still probably questioning the wisdom of giving him the 4-year deal. I think that's still the main takeaway from this season for him.
Although I thought it was a nice touch that it was pointed out on Saturday that he gave McCarthy and Welsh minutes so that they got a league winners medal.
Mm-hmm.
That 10th appearance, I believe they had to make 10 appearances. Is that right? And
I mean, when I remember reading into the rules about that and stuff, and they can just purchase more if they want more. I think, it's like to get it automatically and kind of having earned it, all that kind of thing. I thought it was a nice gesture as well. McCarthy, for the purposes of this list, which is obviously bigger than a league winners medal, Tony. He would have made it anyway on the minutes, even without that cameo in the last game of the season. But I don't think we should spend too much time in James McCarthy, because literally I think the biggest takeaway is that 4-year deal. I still think that's the main takeaway. Next couple, Nir Beaton, James Forrest, two veterans. Again, are any of you thinking they should have been any higher up? Even though me and Alison sit here and defend James Forrest routinely, it's not been a great season. It's just part and parcel of it, I think.
I thought Nir Beaton might have been slightly higher up. I thought he kind of featured it sporadically throughout the season. I thought he might have just climbed a bit.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that, Alison. I thought that the minutes that he did play in the games that he played, he actually featured quite prominently.
He moved up 2 spaces. The last time there was 24 people on the list. He actually moved up 2, and his average rating had increased. But the start of the season and more than a few kind of appearances where it wasn't ranked particularly high or anything like that, rated particularly highly, they all kind of took it down a wee bit. But he had a fair few 8s. And as I've pointed out in both my near beat on piece and in this list, he made big contributions this season, I would argue, like the likes of the League Cup semi-final against St Johnstone, away to Livingston in particular, games like that. I thought
Boxing Day as well.
St Johnstone Boxing Day. So no, again, it's maybe a reflection on, and this is where we'll come to with the most controversial one at number 16 there. Maybe a reflection both on inconsistency and the form of the people above them. Because we've already had a couple of comments saying Abada 16, bit harsh, that kind of sentiment. Tony, what's your thoughts?
Well, we spoke about it off air, and whilst he's made a valid contribution in terms of goals and assists, he has had lots of spells where he started games, but he hasn't really done much, has he? And then he's been rotated a lot. So, it's possibly harsh on Abada, but I can see why.
I'm quite shocked at that. I have to say. If you'd asked me to say, who are the 10 most influential players at Celtic this season, I think I would probably have had Abada in the top 10 just on memory of games and over goals and assists. So I think that's an interesting one.
I think when I was looking through the spreadsheet, and I said this at the last update, he's a victim of his own game time. I think early in the season, because he couldn't be rotated out early in the season when he wasn't playing well. So there was quite a lengthy kind of spread of 4s and 5s, even though his overall output was phenomenal. And it genuinely was, not just for his age, but just in general. Like 15 goals, 9 assists, and he was the only player this season to score in the league, both cups and in Europe. It was a phenomenal season. It's just, it was inconsistent as well. And I think that's why his average rating was so relatively low. He did jump 3 places again. He was 19th in the last one, which caused absolute mayhem. But he has moved up, but just not quite that much. The next 2 as well, I think might annoy some people. I know number 14, Tom Rogic. My mum's already messaged me raging that he's so low down, but again, I would argue it's a man of moments, lots of inconsistency. I was surprised he got a team of the season nod. Some of the best football in his career, but also routinely inconsistent, I would have said.
Yeah, I know. And again, I think sometimes coming in off the bench or playing an hour and then going off too. Yeah, I'm quite surprised at it. I'm equally surprised at where Giakoumakis is as well. When you consider, joint top league scorer this season. If you think, but again, I think that would be reflective probably of the fact that it was really only from January that he kicked on. I think it would just be reflective of the fact he had a very strong second half of the season.
It was, I mean, when it was, I mean, I've noted it in the kind of rundown on the website as well, just how different the first half of the season was compared to the second half of the season. No, it's not that he never got minutes. He never got as many minutes, obviously, in the first half of the season, but he did get minutes. And it was simply, he wasn't doing much, to be honest. When he got the minutes, it wasn't 10-minute cameos. Most of them were half hour or more, so the count in the rankings and stuff, it couldn't justifiably take it away. It did rise, though. He was like 20th or something at the first rankings that he qualified for. He's now 13th. His average rating has run up and up and up, as you'd expect. And when you look at the goals, I mean, everybody knows the stats by now, but I'm still going to say them. He had 1 goal in those first 9 appearances and then 16 in his next 20. A goal every 92 minutes of competitive action. I don't really like doing this because goals to starts are only relevant if he's actually only scoring in starts, which wasn't the case. But for him, most of them actually, when he starts, he scores. So the starts, 15 games he started, and in those 15 games, 14 goals and 1 assist. So although he's 13th, doesn't crack the top 10, he's consistently moved up, as have a lot of the players here actually. Some of the top 10 weren't in the top 10 at the last update.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, I think possibly Giakoumakis is one that's a surprise that he's not in the top 10. But having explained the rationale behind it, then he's did very well to get to 13th. So had he got in the top 10, would it have surprised you? No, but you can't underestimate his contribution this season. And a fully fit Giakoumakis will be in the top 5 next season.
Oh, is that your way too early prediction? We're not doing them yet. We're doing them in a couple of weeks. Gary McComb makes a good point, and I totally agree. His contribution can't really be measured in terms of when he started scoring as well. When Kyogo was out, and it became a debate: should he start over Kyogo for the bigger games, that kind of thing. And I mean, I've just said to you the goal record after the turn of the year and all that, but the last update, the way that we summed it up was he was starting to play so well that if Celtic do go on to lift the league title, he will have been as crucial to it as anyone. Yeah. And I think that's exactly what Gary's getting at. It has been.
Yeah, we're not disputing that. Rogic, again, as Alison alluded to, he played many kind of 60, 65 minutes, but they weren't all of the Ibrox standard.
No.
Celtic went to Ibrox and 1-1. I think that's a fair point well made, Alison, on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Galea there, we've kind of skipped over Turnbull, but Turnbull should be higher. Maybe. I mean, his raw output, again, has been good. Has he played well in every game? I would argue no. I think when we get the kind of the upper echelons here, specifically the top 3 or 4, I think you see what you have to do to actually get in those positions over the course of a season with average ratings and stuff. We've got a couple of comments coming in. Patrick McLaughlin obviously mentioned the spread of the performances. You could make a case for 7 or 8 players, and that is exciting, but I think that's a great comment. As we go up, O'Reilly and Hatate. O'Reilly was actually in the top 10 the last time. His form probably hasn't dipped that much. He loses out, actually, I must note. I would have him above Hatate if it was just a normal tiebreaker of just picking it, but Hatate played more, so the same average rating gives it to him. Because Hatate's dip was a dip. You could see that he wasn't playing quite to the same level, whereas I think O'Reilly, he might have had a game here or there where he didn't set it alight, but overall he's been really impressive.
He's been excellent. I think he's been absolutely excellent. I think Hatate and O'Reilly both came in January and ignited, I think, the season for Celtic again. I think it just energised them. It really accelerated the development of the team and the squad and the way that Ange Postecoglou wants to play, because there had been a real over-reliance on certain players in the first half of the season just because of the lack of depth. And I think they really did just give them a spurt. I think you think of that game against Hart, a game against Rangers at Celtic Park at the very start of February. I thought they were hugely instrumental at that time.
With O'Reilly, I've actually wrote in the wee kind of rundown part, his entry, that I wouldn't be surprised next season if he's not only in the top 10, but is potentially up at the kind of podium positions, because I think he has been that impressive, and he's only been here for 4 months.
He's also
I really think.
He's also very young.
Yes, 21.
21. The boys are baller and will only improve.
I think when you look at his, obviously the creativity sticks out. He takes his set pieces as well, but he does look for that killer pass. But even on the other side of the ball, he ranks highly in, and I'm going to get Stato on you, but he ranks highly league wide, not just for his position, but league wide in general, in terms of like pressing and possession adjusted pressing and stuff like that. He seems to have pretty much everything, to be honest with you. So 12 for him, potentially harsh, but I do think that Hatate and O'Reilly, both of them were in the top 10 the last update, and I think a lot of that was to do with just how well they started, and it's kind of not regressed to the extent that they've been poor or anything, but regressed just enough from that massively high bar that they set that they've kind of dipped down into the kind of the bottom 10 rather than the top 10. But I mean, anybody surprised that the top 10 includes Anthony Ralston? Maybe surprised that he's 10th?
Yeah, I think he's had an excellent season. I think overall, I think lots of people were pleased for him at the weekend when they saw him lifting the trophy and just having his moment. I think he'd been written off so much at the start of the campaign. I think this time last year, if you'd have been having these discussions, you would have been saying, who are all the guys that are going to go? I think you would have expected them to leave, and it was a position that you thought that desperately needed filled. I think he's compounded expectations this season. I think it shows a real resilience and strength of character on his part to come in and perform the way he did. And yeah, I think he'll be quietly satisfied with his season, and I think that would be reflective of it.
Tony, your namesake?
Yeah, I have to agree.
think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's as Alison said, he was one of the ones who looked to be heading for the exit door. But the manager's got to work on him, and he's taken him to levels that he probably thought he couldn't scale. But he has, and he's did it on merit, and he was in the team on merit. Dipped towards the end of the season, which is probably why he's 10th.
Mm-hmm.
He probably would have been higher, but I look at that top 10, and you've highlighted Gary McDowell's comment there, and that was one that I was thinking as well. The top 10 is 7 of the 12 new players, which highlights how good the Celtic's recruitment's been this year. I can only say that as well. That it's amazing that 7 of the top 10 are new players this season. It shows you the season they've had and the consistency that all of them have shown throughout the season. And a lot of people argue the toss over the order, but you look what
very close, it's very close.
And McGregor being the only one from last season,
Well, Taylor's there as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll come on to Taylor. Somebody will have something to say about Taylor being so high, probably.
So, but to have 7 out of your 10 in our power rankings, or player rankings, to feature as the best player of the season, then that's some doing in terms of the recruitment by the manager and others who were involved in the process.
Definitely, I mean, coming on to number 9, Carl Starfelt. If he'd have said to you the first kind of update of these rankings, Tony, he'd end up not just in the top 10, but comfortably in the top 10. After he's rose every single update. Would you have believed that would have been the case, given the way that he started?
I think he started erratically. I don't think anybody could deny that. But he came on to a game. Now I think Starfelt was a kind of victim of the fact that any mistake he made was highlighted after his poor start. And then he wasn't getting proper praise when he was actually doing very well. People were still picking holes in him, and but he's still uncomfortable, passing the ball out from defence and stuff. But I just think that's the way he is. He looks a bit cumbersome, and he's a big guy, but he certainly knuckled down, and him and Carter Vickers were tremendous at the back by the end of the season, and he proved it. I think he proved it in the second half at Ibrox, big time.
Aye.
When Celtic repelled a lot, and there's a lot of high balls came in, and they dealt with it superbly. And I think it was you that said in the description, you quoted Alan Stubbs saying getting your head onto stuff and being in the right positions doesn't happen by chance. It's all about being in, it's all about that positional sense. And Starfelt grew into the Celtic jersey. I think you'll find this season he really did, and he's now comfortable in his skin and comfortable in his role at the back of the pack, in my opinion.
Dyson Maeda, 8th, the highest of the January signings, which he was actually the lowest of the January signings at the last update. Again, I think that's to do with just how well Hatate and O'Reilly started their Celtic careers. Maeda scored obviously in his debut, but was kind of slower in terms of maybe making that impact. I would argue probably of the kind of the 3 January signings that qualify for the list. Obviously, Degucci hasn't played enough. Maeda probably has been the best when you think of the running.
Yeah, I think he's been excellent. I think his work rate is phenomenal. I think you know exactly what you're going to get. His pressing, his effort. I think he's better out wide than he is through the middle. He had to play through the middle a couple of times, but I think beyond reproach. I think it's been an impressive first 5-6 months, and curious to see just how he fits in next season.
With number 7, I mean, I suppose I should take the lead with this one, because despite making the joke at the last update that I insist you all give him 10 out of 10 every week, that's not actually the case. But his ratings, I mean, someday I've got it started here. Patrick McLaughlin. Taylor's been consistently excellent in the big domestic games since the League Cup final, including the League Cup final and that. I hope Patrick, because he was outstanding in that. I've mentioned that in the kind of description of Taylor, but I've also noted that in the kind of run-in, the kind of post-split fixtures and just before the post-split fixtures, basically the last 12 games, his match ratings from us have been 9 8s and 3 7s, which is why he's risen so highly at the last kind of update. He's just been consistently excellent the last block of games.
I think he's really kicked on. I think you've seen a consistency in performance. I think it'll be interesting to see again what happens next season, because the club has been linked with a couple of left backs, but I think he's offered a fairly compelling argument for inclusion.
Yep. Top 6, Juranovic hasn't played much lately, so his average rating didn't actually change, and he didn't move position either. I still think you have to see the best of him. Don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But again, I think in flashes, you've seen him, and I think he seems like quite a big, colourful personality in and around the dressing room too, which I think can be important.
I was going to say that as well. I think he looks like a guy you would want to be a teammate of, because he looks like a lot of fun, but knuckles down when he needs to, and has shown in flashes, as Alison said there, that he's a player and he's a Croatian international. Not a Croatian international for nothing, you know.
You know that he's been embraced when his teammates are openly giving him pelters on Instagram Live and stuff like that for driving about the city centre singing his own song. But moving into top 5, Tony, I need to start with you, Joe Hart. He's been your. When I look at the ratings, you like a Joe Hart 8.
Do you know what? But I just think that, you know, a lot of the time he's not called to do anything, and then there'll be one moment in the game when he pops up with a big save, and it's all about concentration levels. And it's all right saying you're experienced, you've done it, and this and that, but you've still got to perform. You know, it's easy to switch off as a Celtic goalkeeper. You're watching, Celtic dismantle teams in front of you and stuff, but when you're called upon to do stuff in domestic games, certainly I think Joe Hart's been there for Celtic this season on many occasions. People look to the goal against Rangers, Sakala's goal, and we picked faults in him for that. But for every one of them, there's been 2 or 3 where he's saved Celtic. So yeah, I think he's. I agree with that, Andrew, as well. He's come up to a team that's been good for him, and he's been good for them. It's been a decent marriage for the two of them, and he's loved it. And if Joe Hart had finished Player of the Year in our power rankings, I wouldn't have disputed it. Just so
before we get into the top 4, Alison, I understand you've got to go. You've got a prior commitment. So, any further comments on Joe Hart before you depart?
Before I run off, what I would say is that I think the top 5 is probably reflective of the real influence and spine of the season and the heartbeat of the team, really, this term. I think you couldn't underestimate Jota, Kyogo and McGregor. I think in terms of an attacking sense, I think Jota and Kyogo were excellent. I think I'm really keen to see what Kyogo Furuhashi does next season if he's fit across the course of the campaign, because 30 goals would not be beyond him, I think, if he stays fit. I think it was Celtic's 3rd goal, the goal he scored on Saturday, the very excellent ball over from Anthony Ralston, and then the finish. I just thought it summed up the season. I thought he's just a very intelligent player with his movement and just a fantastic technique too. For me, Cameron Carter-Vickers is arguably the player of the year across the whole league. I think he was exceptional. I think everyone would love to see Carter-Vickers and Jota saying permanent deals. I think the 2 of them offered so much in terms of Celtic season and just what the contribution was that they made. And I think Carter-Vickers just went in and steadied what was a very porous and fragile backline. I think him and Carol Sertfield and Joe Hart all contributed to that in a very positive sense. And I'm not sure much more you could say about Callum McGregor. I think a very mature campaign, and I think he really made the armband his own, which wasn't the easiest thing to do, not just because of the chaos around the season, but also inheriting fairly big shoes to fill with Scott Brown's departure. But I thought he'd done it without trying to copy someone else. I thought he'd done it in his own style, and I think that top 5 really would be reflective of Celtic's season and just how important they were to reclaiming the title.
Thanks very much, Alison. I know you've got to run, but me and Tony will still stick about and give our own kind of views on the top 5 and take them in reverse order. But cheers, Alison.
Thank you.
Alison, thank you.
See you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Gary McDowell just getting in this, and well said, Alison. I think we're probably going to say quite a bit of the same stuff, but with Kyogo, Tony, you've got hundreds of comments coming in here about Kyogo. It's just before his injury, won the league. For me, he should be player of the season. Andrew Gillia, Patrick McLaughlin would have been player of the year, but for injury. There's a few saying that kind of sentiment, Tony. I don't think it's that hard to disagree. I mean, to agree. I mean,
I wrote a piece earlier in the season saying he was going to be player of the season, and then he got injured for a fair spell of it. But I agree with Ralston. I think that goal on Saturday was microcosmic of Celtic's season. That movement and that finish and the ball from Ralston was exquisite. But Kyogo's been doing that all season when he's played. It's just having the presence of mind to spot that. I mean, the goal against Ferencváros at home with Jota's pass, it's a thing of beauty, but you've got to pick out the run, and he's been doing it the whole campaign. And once somebody tunes into that and plays the perfect pass, then, Kyogo will score because he's so intelligent. He's always on the move. He is a defender's nightmare because just when you think you're marking him or you've got him, you lose sight of him. And I did a feature very early when we started the Celtic way, and it was about 7 defenders that marked Henrik Larsson.
Yeah.
And they said the one thing that marked Henrik Larsson as special was he could vanish into thin air. And I think Kyogo, early days, but it's similar. Guys think they've got him, and the next thing he drops the shoulder, he moves, he's away, he's gone. And a lot of his goals, he's scored because he's been in space himself, which was a hallmark of Larsson. Larsson used to do that, And I say I'm not making a direct comparison. I'm talking about the actual
sacrilege.
The actual ability to be a striker, the actual role of a striker is to create space in crowded boxes, to be cool when you're finishing. But that's something that I've always also picked up upon as well. He can be negligent in his finishing as well because he still misses chances. So
that's true. I would agree with that.
And I think a sharper Kyogo, and I agree with Alison, he could score 30 goals next season if he starts to be even more clinical than he is. And he's still pretty clinical, but I think, I think he can get better. And I think that's the message that Ange Postecoglou will be driving home to him as well. You've had a great season, but you can always get better. And I think if you strive to get better, then Celtic will see the best of him.
Andrew Allen, a couple of comments there about Kyogo. Patrick McLaughlin already looking beyond next season, thinking Kyogo's going to be a wanted man. See if he keeps performing and stays fit, he probably will be a wanted man. I suppose the one thing Celtic will have on their side is he's not a teenager or in his early 20s, so it's not necessarily going to be that as much of an attractive option as a kind of younger player. Might be clutching at straws there, but that's the way I would be looking at it. From that point,
he's also very happy, Sean. He looks like a happy player in his environment, So I think a lot of these guys, personal happiness comes into it as well. There's bags of money to be made elsewhere. I get that, but they still, when you're at the top end of Celtic, you're still getting handsomely rewarded, and you're competing for trophies, and you're winning, and that's just as important to a lot of players as well, and the environment as well, and the manager you're playing under.
Speaking of being happy at Celtic, we go into the podium places now, Tony. Drum roll, even though it's already on the screen. Jota, third. He was first in when the first update he qualified for, he was second to Kyogo. Went top, then went second. Now he's third. Are you surprised that he's not higher, or is third probably about right, given who's above him?
Listen, I'm looking at the top 4, right, and I think you could pair any one of those 4 in any order and put them wherever you want in those rankings, and I don't think anybody would have questioned it. Jota's been absolutely magnificent. He brought a bit of flair. He's brought real imagination. A real throwback to a kind of winger of the past, guy that likes to beat people and entertain, and he's got a decent conversion rate and decent assist rate. So that's what the Celtic supporters love to see. But there have been times when, like every winger, they can be enigmatic, can't they?
They can. I mean,
and there's been a few games where he's not been the Jota, the electrifying Jota that we know, and people have picked up on that. But if you're asking, about 6.5 million, I still think it's a steal for Jota, to be honest.
The thing is, it was stuck in people's minds for a wee bit because after his injury, he didn't hit the heights that he did at the start. Because at the start, he was extremely consistent. He was producing left, right, and centre. Come back from his injury, didn't hit those heights. People were starting to kind of question him a wee bit, and then the last kind of block of games as the season was drawing to a close, he found it again and was brilliant. So, and when you actually look at it in terms of the match ratings and stuff, there was very little dip in the overall scheme of things. He was very consistent, which is why he ended up with an average rating over 7, which was, again, it's only the top 4 that managed that. You're splitting hairs when you get to these things at the top, and it's very much close at the top, if you know what I mean. But McGregor, silver medalist, he was actually third in, I think, every update until this one. He's moved up to second, not quite enough to oust Mr. Carter Vickers there from the top, but a word for McGregor, Tony, because what can you say about him this season, really?
I've run out of words for McGregor. He's just been absolutely inspirational. And as I also said, he, like Scott Brown, he's become the fulcrum and heartbeat of that team on his own merit, but not copying anybody. And he, and anyone who had any reservations about him being handed the armband, I think they've been cast aside big time, haven't they? If Cal Mac wins this, then I would be just as delighted. But it shows you the season and the impact that Cameron Carter-Vickers has made. I joke that, Cameron Carter-Vickers 8 was his name now.
Pretty much has been, Tony.
Callum McGregor 8, Callum McGregor 9. He's been incredibly consistent, just unflappable. He's never really been in bother, domestically certainly, maybe in Europe, but that's something a stage that he wasn't used to playing on. And, you can only gain experience by putting yourself up against these kind of teams. So everything's a learning curve and a learning process, but certainly domestically he's been imperious. And I say the same about McGregor. McGregor's been absolutely sensational this season. So I don't know how close it was, Sean, but
very close. It was very close. You'll see if you go on the ranks. I'll put the link in the comments and stuff. But with McGregor, I mean, Alison kind of alluded to it, but just to reiterate, first season as skipper, right? The actual task that was in front of him, taking that armband, new manager, pretty much a whole new squad of teammates, which he has to be the leader of. Supporter unrest, lest we forget, at boardroom level decision making. Quiet and not so quiet.
A new style of football.
Aye. Quiet, but also sometimes not so quiet. Doubts that he was captain material. In the wake of Scott Brown's departure. I'd argue that he rose to every one of those challenges and more. Said it before, I might as well say it again, that it's not just that he's turned out to be the right captain for Celtic, but he's turned out to be the right captain for Postecoglou and what he's trying to do as well. In terms of our ratings, it was worth noting that he's ranked or rated a 7 or 8 4 times as often as he has a 6, which shows you he's very rarely, if ever, a 6 when he plays. And think of the amount of minutes he actually puts in to actually achieve that is why he's second. So.
And, and all the stuff that happened this season, all the things that he did, the moment that typified it for me, Sean, was the 7th minute at Ibrox. When he just charged forward, just took it upon himself to lead by example. And, just refused to accept that they'd started poorly and dragged his team back into the game. If ever a captain led by example, it was that day. You talk about captains and moments, like Roy Keane's for Man U against Juventus, scoring a goal that drags his team back into a game. Callum McGregor dragged Celtic back into that game after losing a goal inside 3 minutes, and by 7 minutes they were level. That's what captains do. They step up to the plate, that forceful run into the box, which caused the opportunity for Rogic to score. And I mentioned before that the players never really celebrated that because they were really disappointed with the way they started. It was a question of, right, we're back in it, let's get to work. And I think that's what Callum McGregor was saying to them at that point. Right, come on, we've started poorly, let's get into this now. And they did, and they played really well. And that's the games where you're judged on and people see your worth to the team. And Callum McGregor, all throughout the season, but that game in particular, was outstanding.
Definitely. And I think, again, from what I always say about the way that Postecoglou talks about resilience in terms of playing your football when it goes wrong, that kind of thing, That's why he's the perfect captain for Postecoglou. He will do that. He will continue to make sure they're passing it rather than lumping it, all that kind of stuff. Arthur Taylor, agreeing with everything you said there, Tony. I mean, we've got to give a couple of minutes to Carter Vickers, considering he's the first ever Celtic Way player of the season. Which, as I say, is the prize that they were all after this season, I'm sure. But first, and it was first at the last update. I remember tweeting out that we'd only just done the update and then it came back and there was a game at Ibrox. He obviously scored the winner, played well. Him and Starfelt both played well, obviously, but he scored the winner. And I tweeted out at the time saying he's not going to be buzzed from that top spot, is he? And I'm not really surprised that he hasn't. 8 out of 10 for 6 of the final 8 games. He's still ranked an 8 or rated an 8 more often than any other scorer this season. He's just been excellently consistent, Tony.
The only one that got close to him was Chris Kane, and that's because he was booting him on the floor.
That's true.
St Johnston's Chris Kane. So he was unflappable. He was just that calmness and composure personified, and he helped Starfelt as well. Mm-hmm. I think come on to a game.
We did.
Because the two of them ended up tuning into each other, getting that wavelength right, and Starfelt started to. You hate that phrase dovetail, but he did. Mm-hmm. The two of them were kind of in unison, and they were a big package, a big kind of unit. And you say to yourself, well, that's how they were difficult to break down. Mm-hmm. Eventually, after Starfelt's kind of initial start, but from the very start, Cameron Carter-Vickers was just looked every inch a commanding centre half to me. And despite people saying, height and all that, I don't think he's actually that big, is he? Or he's
no, 6 foot, I think, but it's his leap.
He looks bigger. He just looks an imposing figure. Mm-hmm. That's it for me. But I think he's been terrific. And again, if you can get him for 6 million, okay, maybe 10 million in add-ons, but I still think it's a price worth paying. So, because I don't think you'll get any better for that kind of money right now. And I think he's just an important cog in Celtic's machine moving forward, getting into the Champions League group stages.
You referenced the Alan Stubbs article that he was talking to you, obviously, for the website, and he spoke about the defenders. It was actually Cameron Carter-Vickers' entry that I quoted that in. And basically Stubbs said that it's not about just kicking their head in the ball, it's about consistently being in the right positions. A ball doesn't just hit your head or your foot by accident. It's because you're in the right places at the right times. And basically, Carter-Vickers has been in the right place at the right time virtually all season. And I've no doubt or I've no surprise that so many Celtic fans want him to stay. Some would argue, and I've written this in his entry, some would argue that Celtic has become the right place at the right time for him in his career.
Yeah.
And fans, I'm sure, plenty of comments in saying hope he stays. You would hope that he realises that because he's been excellent all season. And as much as it probably pains you if you look back and he doesn't sign, that the first ever player of the season was a loan signing that was only there for a season over Callum McGregor. You'll always have that season if he doesn't sign. He's been excellent.
Of course, and I think if you're looking at it, Celtic is the right place at the right time. If you want to sign for the club, or you want to stay, because there's a trajectory that's going like that. It's on an upward trajectory under the manager and the team that they've got, and so it's a happy place. It's a happy ship. They've won a league where they weren't expected to win. They've won it in some style, and there's a real harmony there, and that stems from the manager and people like Callum McGregor. And I just think that Jason makes a point that's scary that 2 of the top 3 aren't yet signed. Yeah, I just think that Celtic can offer you a lot in your career at this juncture.
Yeah.
A hell of a lot that a lot of teams will not be able to. I'm talking about in terms of football, in terms of money. If money's all that you're after, then of course it's a no-brainer. You'll get offered more elsewhere. That's a fact of life. But in terms of football and prestige and and competing to win things and then playing at the highest level, then there's a lot worse places to be than Celtic at this moment in time, I would conjecture.
Before we wrap up, I'm going to put this comment up from Rob McCune, which is a very, very positive point to end on. Every player in the top 16 still has room for improvement. Very exciting prospect, isn't it, Tony?
Of course it is. And that's what the manager will be driving home to them.
Yep.
The managers, we never stop. So if we never stop, then, You want to win the league next season, but win it better. You want to get into the Champions League and compete, do it better. Have a better run than you did last season in Europe, improve, always make progress. So that's exactly what he wants, and that's exactly what he'll be striving for. And it is. I don't know about you, but I want next season to start tomorrow. I'm really buzzing for it, and just the fact that you're just so excited to see where this team can go under the manager, and with the help of a few more additions as well. So it's an exciting time.
It certainly is. I mean, you say, as I supposed to Coggle says, we don't stop. We will stop. We'll stop there for the day.
Yeah.
We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks everybody for your comments, as always. Appreciated. Thanks again to our sponsors, One Football, one stop shop for all your kind of scores and news needs on a match day and every other day really. And you can see the ticker along the bottom. We genuinely do appreciate everybody that's subscribed to the website. You can still do it. £3 for the next 3 months. That will see you through. I use this phrase in the power rankings and get called out for it for being too NBA. It will see you through the off season. It will see you through that. It will see you through pre-season, if you want to put it that way. The summer anyway. We'll have plenty of features, plenty of interviews, plenty of different things on the briefing and in the website. So I appreciate it all, guys. Thanks for your contribution, Tony. Thanks for your comments again. You behave yourself out there, Tony, and we'll see you tomorrow.
I'll try.